Hey guys, it's Alyssa. This is the writing strategy action plan video, and this is sample 3 because I'm in group 3. So I'm looking at a writing sample from Deng, who is a 7th grader, and he's a language level 2 in English, which means that he is a little bit lower on the English learning spectrum, but because he's in 7th grade, the content is a little bit more difficult. So the writing prompt that he was given says that global warming has become a serious threat to our planet. Explain what we can do as citizens to reduce the effects of global warming, and then consider the following factors. And the teacher listed 3 and then kind of gave a definition by each. So she says recycling, the impact of fossil fuels like oil, gas, or coal, and then the impact of consumerism, which is buying things. So this is the writing sample that he has. I'm just showing you so you can kind of see handwriting, punctuation, spelling. I know it's not going to be up here for very long, but that's kind of what he wrote. So I'm going to read it so that you kind of have an idea of what he was talking about, and then I'll identify some of his strengths and weaknesses. So he wrote, as citizens, we can do many things to reduce the effect of global warming. The recycling, don't throw the water bottle, don't throw the papers, don't throw the plastic, recycle the garbage, and make use of again and again. The impact of fossil fuels, don't drive the car, don't use the oil, gas, coal. They don't make again, so gone. When they burn the coal warm, the impact of consumerism, many consumerism buy things and just throw anywhere or somewhere else. So after looking at that, digging into that a little bit, I found that his strengths were that he had a really solid introduction, especially for an LL2. The fact that he says, as citizens, we can do many things to reduce the effect of global warming, like that's something that I would write, and I'm 22 and a senior in college. So pretty solid introduction. He discussed all components that were a part of the writing prompt, so he did address each factor, which was good. He had really good ideas about how to stop global warming because the prompt was, how do we stop it? And so he had ideas on what to do there. Overall, his spelling is pretty solid. He didn't spell too many words wrong, which was good. And then he does have some punctuation. So apostrophes in don't, he used the word don't quite a bit. So some words that are don't have apostrophes. The other ones do not. He has some periods, but again, not the entire thing. So we've got to start on punctuation. For his weaknesses, I put that his sentences were very choppy. They weren't very fluent. Not all were complete sentences. So like the one sentence says the recycling. Things like that. So we want to work on getting that entire sentence structure together. And then he has a lot of like imperative sentences like don't throw the papers, don't do this, don't do that. And so working on adding like a direct subject like we shouldn't do this, and then adding maybe like logic behind it just so that it's not like a don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Talk about maybe why, which I know is kind of advanced, but that would be like a next step. And then I also wrote just very basic, so I kind of touched on that already. So the strategy that I would choose to use for Deng to help with his writing is called the writing framework, and this is on page 123 in chapter 5 of the Gibbons text. And this strategy, just kind of a brief introduction, provides learners with explicit framework for the writing that the rest of the class is doing. So it's kind of an additional support for ELL students, and it helps to give them an outline of what's going on, especially with a prompt like this in a 7th grade classroom for an LL2 student. This is a pretty advanced prompt and requires a lot of that deeper thinking and some of those key vocabulary words. And so a support like this might help them out. So here's kind of what the support looks like, and I know it's kind of difficult to read here, but I'm going to go through and model how I would use this with Deng, who again is a 7th grade ELL student. So Deng, today we are going to work on a writing prompt about global warming. We've been talking about the impacts of global warming and kind of how it's hurting our environment. So before we start writing today, I think we're going to fill out this graphic organizer just to kind of get some of our ideas down. So we're going to start out with our title. And for our title, that's kind of the title of the prompt. So what are you going to be writing about today? And then when you have that in your head, you can fill it out, or you can go through the rest of this, and then you can come back and fill out your title once you figure it out. That's okay too. So the first box here talks about what the discussion is about and my opinion. So this is kind of to help you get settled here. So you can answer these questions. The topic of this discussion is, what are you talking about? And then what's your opinion on the topic? So for this one, we're talking about global warming. So you would fill in your topic with that. And then I want to know your opinion. What do you think about global warming and what can we do to help it? And then we're going to look at some arguments. So the next box is arguments for. There are a number of reasons why I believe this. So you're supporting what you believe about global warming. So you're going to start out by writing first, and you're going to write your first fact. Then you're going to write in addition, and then your next fact, and then finally, and then your last fact. Next, when we're writing argument papers like this or trying to convince someone, it's important to think about what the other side might think about this. So we're going to do counter arguments, which just means that it's arguments against what you're saying. So if you said something, what might I say that could potentially stop you from thinking that? So you're going to answer the question, on the other hand, some people argue. So what might people argue against your point? In addition, or they might also say that. So you can fill those out. And then when we're done, we get to our conclusion. So you can end your paper with, however, my view is that, and then whatever your view is, because telling us why is very important. So I'm going to give you this to start out with, and I want you to just fill this out, kind of give me a brief introduction, and then when you're ready, you can go on and start writing your paper. So that's why I would use that strategy with Deng. It's good for him because it kind of helps to organize those thoughts before he gets writing. Like I mentioned, he has really good ideas in his writing, and he discusses all the components, but it's very choppy, and so this will help it become more of like a fluid paper. It will also help him kind of build on to those ideas. So he's got those basic ideas, but it'll help him add that detail. This is also another good component that it's great for ELL students, but it's also great for an entire class. Like if your class is struggling with a certain part of writing, it makes them think a little bit about what they're going to write about before they get started. So that's really beneficial. And then you can scaffold it as much as you want. So if you're in like an elementary classroom and you just want them to tell what is wrong with global warming, you could take out the counter arguments. And again, this might not be right at the direct level of Deng, but you could scaffold it so that it was useful for him. So yeah, this was the writing framework strategy, and I think it would be really beneficial.